Hi, everyone. Spencer Pauly here again with Tim Clauser, Center Square's Eastern Washington reporter. Today, we're talking about a new article of his called Spokane Passes New Citywide Camping Ban. Now, Tim, your article reads as follows. I want to read the opening paragraph here. On the heels of an ethics complaint, the Spokane City Council passed a citywide camping ban on Monday, replacing another one approved by nearly 75% of voters in 2023. Now, we've talked about this before here, but here's the thing, Tim. I cover so much other stuff. I kind of already forgot some of the basics about the dueling camping ban ordinances. So why don't we just start off here? Can you just first explain the difference between the two ordinances, the one that is being replaced and the one that was just passed on Monday?
Yeah, so I could go into this for a long time, but to keep it simple, the voters approved this citizen initiative in 2023 with nearly 75% of the vote that made it illegal to camp within 1,000 feet of a school, park, or daycare in Spokane. Now, the state Supreme Court struck that down recently, not ruling on the constitutionality of the law, but ruling that it fell outside of the initiative process. So the Spokane City Council could restore it word for word by a vote of itself, but it can't be done through the citizens initiative. So the council minority tried to do this more than once and was shot down by the council's progressive majority. So they ultimately got to this proposal for a new camping ban. Now, they voted on this ordinance on June 16th, a few weeks ago, along with the rest of Mayor Lisa Brown's proposal to overhaul the city's response to homelessness. But that initial vote failed. And now there is dozens of people that showed up to testify. The meeting stretched well beyond midnight. But once most of the people left after that initial vote, the council had a brief recess and then they motioned to reconsider, adjusting a provision that much of the community didn't like that required up to a week's notice to break up an encampment. They reduced that down to 3 days and then said, hey, we're going to vote on it again in 2 weeks. So that vote happened last night. Another amendment was offered that eliminated that notice period altogether and added in other language. So essentially now under this citywide camping ban, an officer has to post notice before issuing a citation, but it doesn't have to wait any period of days. It can just show up, post notice, and issue a citation when someone is blocking, quote, any portion of public property. So it doesn't matter if someone is taking up, Spokane has very wide sidewalks. You have areas where there's 12-foot sidewalks. So it doesn't matter if they're sitting up and taking a 2 to 3 foot area or the entire 12 feet. If they're blocking any access or use of the public property, then they can be subject to a citation under this, unless they agree or they comply with an officer's demands to leave that area, or there's a provision in the ordinance that says you won't be subject to enforcement if you accept treatment or housing services. So that's essentially where we're at.
Gotcha. And so this is all part of Mayor Brown's, she's had a preference for a holistic approach to the camping ban, correct? Is that what I'm saying?
Yeah. So a lot of business owners and residents over the last year have advocated for increased enforcement of the city's unlawful camping laws. They argue that it's been lackluster. Enforcement has increased significantly, but not to the par that a lot of businesses would see due to the impacts that they face with the crisis being right out front their doors. But so the city used to go focus more on a congregate shelter approach, more of a one size fits all, where you have a lot of people in these massive shelters her than smaller scattered site shelters, which Mayor Brown is going after, that try to target individual needs. So her proposal to overhaul the city's response is trying to go along this more holistic approach. There's several ordinances that are part of this, so the camping ban is just one. But the city council passed the first half of the overhaul 2 weeks ago, and then with the camping ban passing, and then right after that, they passed an aggressive solicitation ordinance. Both of those kind of complete the overhaul. So
this new ban includes exemptions for constitutional rights in, I think, emergency situations, correct? So we're talking extreme weather events, right?
Yeah. Well, there's a number of exemptions in there, but then there's also some other provisions that seem to kind of negate those exemptions. So I don't quote me on the exact exemptions, but generally, if someone is physically or mentally disabled, there's an exemption. If you're expressing your constitutional rights, like protesting or freedom of speech, if you're requesting emergency aid, so if you need police or an ambulance, you can't be cited. But then there's also provisions saying that, look, it's not exempted if you're blocking any portion of public property. So it gives you all those exemptions, but it says, but if you're blocking, quote, any portion of public property, quote, then you're still subject to a citation. So there's lots of give and takes. The council saw it as sort of like a compromise with some of the business community in passing it, but other service providers and advocates on the other side say, hey, this isn't a compromise. This is just appeasing downtown.
Tim, you included a lot of just different perspectives from Spokane residents who spoke during these previous council meetings about the subject. And I think in this last article you quoted, I hope I get this name right, Caitlin Malmquist. And she argued that expecting voluntary compliance is, quote, abandonment rather than compassion. Now, how representative is her view among Spokane residents and business owners? Is this like what we're hearing a lot of during these public comment periods?
Well, it's hard to base the view of the entire city off of one council meeting. I mean, on a bigger council meeting, you might have over 100 people that show up to testify. But is that representative of a city with 250,000 something residents? I mean, not really, but I would say, with this ordinance, in particular, the vast majority of people, it's hard to say testified against. They weren't in favor of the ordinance because they wanted another ordinance replicating, the voter approved version, that the council minority tried to propose. But they were in favor of this version over the one that was voted on June 16th that had that 7-day waiting period. So I would say that in terms of the people that showed up to testify, her view was representative. But even on June 16th, I mean, people were saying service providers were testifying on June 16th when they initially rejected the campaign ban and said, hey, look, what difference does a week make? I mean, some of these people have been out here for months, years. What difference is a week going to make in them accepting services?
That's true. Even some, I think you quoted one homeless woman who spoke. She supported the ban, but she also emphasized the need for more shelter options for Spokane to provide. Now, I'm curious, how are voices like hers being factored into the city's homelessness strategy? Are they directly talking to the people who are living on the streets? Like, are they taking their input?
I know much of the council does. There's stakeholders that lead these. For several months, they led these daily walks from City Hall to the county campus where they would kind of observe the crisis. But so I would say that they're talking to these people. You're referring to Sunshine Wiggins. She testifies, if not every week, almost every week on a lot of the things on the council's agenda. But I mean, given her position as being homeless herself in the city of Spokane, this was particularly relevant to her. I mean, she spoke up. She said, like you said, she was in support of the camping ban, particularly as it relates to her caring for her late friend's son, who is an adult and has issues of his own. They're both on the streets. But at the same time, she said, look, we need laws like this to keep the community and to keep our kids accountable. But then at the same time, as someone being homeless, where do you want us to go? It's not like we can just go to the street over if this is citywide.
Right.
I mean, they have to either leave or accept services. And there's a lot of services in Spokane, but at the same time, there's not enough shelter beds for everyone to sleep in if the whole city just said, hey, we're going to comply today. That's not realistic to say. So a lot of people have advocated for creating a designated area where people can go and live kind of like an encampment, but with service providers all around so they can quickly locate people that they need to administer medications to, or get them up to date on their documentation, stuff with housing services, etc. But whether that be through an encampment style area or a larger facility, I know a lot of people in the community have advocated for a larger behavioral health facility, as has the county and some city officials.
Tim, with these designated areas, are there any concrete plans to create such spaces?
From what I'm aware, no. Okay. No, there isn't. I mean, at least in Spokane, I mean, the county has several resources, these almost 24/7 hour sobering detox beds. But the holding period is only so long. And while they have seen some success with that, it's not really a place where the city can say, hey, let's send the 2,000 something homeless people we have to this location. I mean, it's not feasible and doesn't look like it's going to come out of nowhere at this point.
Well, Tim, we have to talk about this email chain that you mentioned in your article here, and that's among this email chain among residents and business owners, and they mentioned a potential recall election. Now, first off, how serious is this recall movement? And then I'll ask the big question after that. But how serious is this recall movement we're talking about?
Well, the email chain you're referencing, it's an email chain including hundreds of people from residents, business owners, local and state politicians, and more. A lot of the people don't reply. You do have this group of maybe a couple dozen people that consistently reply every day. But last summer, they continually threw out the word recall. They wanted to put out a recall election to pull much of the progressive majority on the council and Mayor Lisa Brown from office. Now, the group talks like they're serious, and they might be starting the process as we speak. But nothing came out of it last summer when we initially covered it. And they've talked about wanting to give the administration more opportunities to prove its case in terms of public safety. But now they're revisiting that conversation this morning saying, hey, enough is enough. It's time to start the process. And that email garnered a response from Councilmember Paul Dillon, who's a part of the progressive majority.
Quite playful, right?
Yeah, he emailed them back and said, as a matter of fact, the recall conversation actually came up during last night's meeting, and he included a hyperlink in his email to say, hey, if you want to hear what I had to say about the recall, just click this link. It wasn't until after I myself clicked this link that I realized it was one of the infamous Rick Roll memes, essentially linking to the song Never Gonna Give You Up, which, as we all know, has been used for over a decade as a viral internet meme. So,
and you hyperlinked in your article, so you're basically Rickrolling anyone who clicks that. So you're spreading the word.
I did include it in the article, but I made sure to provide the context ahead of time so that we are not lying to readers.
That's true. Yeah. Well, Tim, great job covering all this, and we appreciate what you do. And for all the listeners, viewers, readers at home, thanks for doing so. We'll see you next week. Thank you.